Welcome back to our weekly Torah podcast. I'm Nathaniel here with Sam and our live audience, and today we're exploring Parashat Ki Tavo, which we just read. This parasha brings us into the closing chapters of Deuteronomy, where Moses prepares the people for entering the land of Israel. And it opens with a mitzvah of bikkurim, bringing the first fruits, and then presents powerful blessings and curses, reminding us that our choices shape our destiny. It's a portion filled with gratitude, responsibility, and accountability, and themes that feel especially timely especially this time of the year as we prepare for Rosh Hashanah and the New Year. And I noticed something in the reading. Very short aliyot. Look at the whole structure of the parasha. And this gives you a clue into the importance and the hierarchy of what should be. And it's very strategically positioned, I think. So you look at the first 5 aliyot. They're very short. They're brief. They're bring your fruit, this, and the blessing. And then you get to the dreadful 6 aliyot, which it's cringeworthy in what we're reading. It's very brutal, the curses, and maybe we'll read some of those in here, but it's very harsh, and that's what you take from this. But like everything God does, if you move on to the 7th aliyah, you see kind of a smoothing over. It's a softness in this. Listen, I've given you a bulk of this parasha in threats of curses, and now here's what happens if you're good, and I wish you the best in your journey. So
Right, and it's it is brutal, but no more brutal than Jewish history has actually been.
it's true.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing is that it
You literally
jives
reap what you sow.
it jives with reality, and we'll talk about that. And part of the reason why I think it's so long and repetitive, it's because he doesn't want you to go there, right?
I
It's
agree. So let's
yeah,
start with the
right.
first one. Let's start on a good note, the bikurim, the first fruits, which is in Deuteronomy 26, 1 through verse 1 through 11, where the farmer brings the first fruits to the temple and recites a declaration of gratitude, retelling the story of our people's journey from Egypt to the promised land. It's a recurring theme we've seen for the last 2 books of Moses. So I think the lesson here is gratitude is not abstract. It's tied to action and remembrance.
You know,
What do you think, Sam?
it's real. It has to be real. And if you just look at your own interactions with other people, if people just give you words and no action to back them up, you don't listen to them. You don't consider them. It's when you see somebody who tells you something and then does it that you say, okay, this is a solid person I can trust. It's the same thing. It's no different. And a lot of
No,
people think that because Hashem is invisible, that you can get away with all this stuff, where you could say something and not do it or whatever. And it's like, no, it's even more so. Like I tell my kids at the Shabbat table, when they're being informal or whatever, and I said, if if a king was sitting here or if President Trump was sitting at our Shabbat table, you all would be like, this and dressed in your best clothes and we have Hashem in front of us.
mm-hmm.
People are nothing next to Hashem, but we don't realize it. And I think that's the lesson.
That was very good. I love that.
You
So
shall place the name of God before you always.
sorry, James, what was that?
You shall place the name of God before you always. That i-
Absolutely.
that is uh, that is in the Psalms, and also it is in the first section of the Bet Yosef slash Shulchan Aruch.
Right. And the powerful thing about that is that why, right? Why should you place Hashem's name? Because he's always there, right? He's always there. the one who invented the eyes can see. The one who invented hearing can hear, right? And we have to remember, many people say, oh, why should I pray to Hashem? He doesn't have time to listen to me. There's billions of people praying to him. You know, we got to remember that those limitations that we think about, they exist for humans. Okay.
Yeah.
Hashem can hear a billion prayers at the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
He can deal with, he doesn't have an attention span problem. He doesn't have to only attend one person at a time, right? None of these limitations exist. So once you start to realize this, there's a fear of Hashem that sort of descends on you, and you realize he's in front of me all the time. There's nothing
Hmm.
I can hide from him.
Right. Well, how do you express, and I'll open this to everybody. I'd love to hear everybody's answer on this. How do we express thankfulness today in modern times? Is it through ritual? Is it from donating or giving back? Is it storytelling that keeps memories alive? I'd like to hear how everybody expresses thankfulness now.
Just by trying to do the right thing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the mitzvot, right? Doing good to your neighbor.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the most impactful. Rafa, go on.
No, I was agreeing. Treat others how you'd like to be treated.
James?
I agree, but also the blessings. Think about the prayer service. It is entirely about expressing thankfulness for God, or almost entirely about expressing thankfulness for God. There are some requests in there, but compared to other religions, in Judaism, the overwhelming emphasis is on thanking. The overwhelming emphasis of the prayer service is on thanking God rather
Right.
than requesting.
Yeah,
Excellent. I mean, look at Shabbat. Look at Friday evening, for instance. Not forget, but put aside that you've done mincha and arvit and all the blessings throughout the day that you're supposed to do, the Shema, everything. You come to the Shabbat table. What do you start? Yom HaShishi, first. First, really, Eshet Chayil, Shalom Aleichem. You're thanking your wife. You're thanking God for the peace, and then the blessings you make. Yom HaShishi, Borei Peri HaGefen, you're blessing the wine. And then you bless the three fruits, one from the tree, one from the land, one from everywhere else, Shakol Niyebi Baru. And then you go wash your hands. There's a blessing over the washing of the hands. Why? To prepare for the blessing over the bread. And then when you think you're all done and can finally eat, when you're done eating, your katamazon, another blessing. When you go to bed, the Shema, another. So it's constant. I love that, James. That's a great
Yeah,
point, and it is thankfulness.
yeah, and if you tie that to reality again, why so much thanking? Because the majority of our life is given to us by Hashem, right? Every heartbeat,
Exactly.
our own life. I mean, we didn't do anything to deserve all this, right? We've done very little on our own. We've probably done maybe 1%, and Hashem does the other 99. So we have to always remember that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like to add to that.
Absolutely, Rafa.
So, the biblical commandment, Doraita, is to bless Hashem after you've eaten. But the sages, in instituting, the before blessing, before you eat, before you enjoy anything. I think there was one midrash, I forget the source, where it says, it quotes something in the Psalms or the Proverbs about how, if someone takes something without, blessing Hashem, not only does it show that they're ingrateful, but also, they're like a thief, who takes from a king's forage without his permission.
Yeah.
So yeah, full of gratitude.
Outstanding.
I do believe also that the Torah, of course, is genial, but by programming us to teach, to thank God. It is programming us also to be in that spirit for our friends, for our neighbors, for our family. It is, we are being programmed by programming us to thank God. We are in that mood. We are programmed to do good and to be grateful, because the rabbis say that ingratitude is akin to idolatry.
Right. And it's
Right.
something interesting. I heard a psychologist say that it's impossible to feel anger while you're feeling grateful.
Very
And,
good.
and I think that that's the idea, is putting us in that state of mind instead of saying, anger and being cheap and being mean and things like that. So yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
First thing I thought of is I play guitar. What is it? It's muscle memory. It's repetition, 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 right? And finally your fingers get in that position, they're moving automatically. And it's
That's
the
right.
same with this. You do enough blessings and
That's
if
right.
you're in that spirit, if you feel goodness and blessing, you give out that karma. So
So
James, yeah.
I linked the article in the chat, but I wanted to talk about it on the podcast. Uh, the the mention of the altar at Mount Ebal uh, at some point in this parasha. Uh, it's been found. Uh,
Tell us about the article since we haven't read it, had a chance to read it.
so an so a Paleo Hebrew inscription from Mount Ebal was found on a folded lead tablet during an excavation in the 1980s, but it recently underwent X-ray tomographic measurements to reveal hidden texts. Uh, Again, it is Paleo Hebrew. It predates any previously known Hebrew inscription in Israel by at least 200 years. And the inscription was, "You are cursed by the god Hashem."
Wow.
So, James, thank you so much. I think that's an amazing piece, and I'm going to link it in the description of the podcast so people can refer to it. It's outstanding.
Amazing. Torah Emet.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Wow.
much for sharing that. Let's move on to the tithes for the poor. I want to keep the conversation going here. So you have the mitzvah of Maaseh Ani commands us to set aside a portion of our produce. We talked about this last week in Tithes, a portion of our produce for strangers, orphans, widows. What's the lesson here? What's the lesson? Why are we doing that?
Right. What's interesting is, if Hashem wanted the poor to have more money, why not just give them more money? Why doesn't Hashem give them more money?
Excellent.
It's knowing. So if you're wealthy, if you have the wealth and you've been successful, it's knowing that, yes, this is my money, but Hashem wants me to give my money. That's the point. It's not about the poor feeling entitled to say, "Oh, you have to give me. I deserve this." No, it is the rich person's money, but he has to give it, right?
Yep.
Even though it's his, it's legally his. He doesn't have to. He can refuse, of course, right?
Mhm.
But the mitzvah is to give your money that you worked for, and you give it away. Why? Because again, you're realizing that, yes, I worked, but most of what I have was because of Hashem. Hashem gives you success. And so he gave this to me. So the same way he gave it to me, he gave me, he wants me to give to someone else.
Yep.
So that's, yeah.
More than a mitzvah, it is an oath, because it says you will appear before Hashem. Of course, when he is far from the sanctuary, this is a promise, an oath he takes before God. More than a mitzvah, it is an oath that he will give.
Very
It is
good.
incumbent upon him.
Which gives it more of a requirement kind of thing, but it's interesting. Again, what happens when you don't do this? What happens when the rich don't give? And then you have income disparity, and then what happens?
That's right.
civilization can come crashing down because of this.
Yeah,
Yep.
people crime often.
Right.
So I have an interesting story. I've taught, for those of you that know me, I got back from an RV trip and this summer, and part of it was in through Pennsylvania, and I spent 2 weeks in Amish country. And what I learned was that the average Amish family has 80 acres of land, and they all work it, and they do not. I shouldn't say they do not. Not all of them, but most of them work like they did pre-technology. So they don't use tractors, they use horses, they use plows, they use those tools. And they kind of look like Chabadniks. So, but what's amazing about it is we were there when they were starting to plow their cornfields. So they grow a lot of corn and some other crop, but corn was the big thing that we saw there. And I saw the corners of their acreage with corn stalks. It looked like they missed them.
Really?
And I asked, and you'll see that almost every Amish home, they're set back, they're perfectly manicured, perfectly maintained. The grounds are beautiful because they all work the land. And everyone near the front of the house, like by the mailbox, there's like a little booth or shelter. And what they do is they put their excess, I guess what they call excess, out there. So it could be flowers from their cuttings, it could be the extra corn, it could be other vegetables that they're growing, and they put them there, and it's give what you can. So and I loved it because the lesson I took from it is if you have the money, the wealthy will drop a $20 bill for a few corn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Few cobs of corn, where somebody that's not, or maybe hungry, will thank them and they'll take what they need. So it's a beautiful way they live. And I that's what I thought of when we were talking about the tithing. And it was just such a neat thing that they do and how they live. They live the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the generosity that's given to the poor. It's like a cycle. Even the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam codify that. Even the poor among us must give tzedakah.
Mm-hmm.
They must tithe.
And
when
it's
the
a
time
flat tax. It's a 10% tithe.
Right. If you want to go more, you could at the 20%.
Absolutely.
So it's a like an economy. There's like a spiritual economy, where these character traits, these midot are exemplified by everybody, So
excellent, Raphael. Naomi, you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, I wanted to build on something that I heard Sam say. That the person has a prerogative to not give their money to somebody who needs it, and if that were to happen, especially on a large scale, we'd end up having tremendous income disparity, rich and poor, a divided society, and that leads to strife and jealousy and hatred and many other things. And so I've heard it said, that the reason, and Sam asked why, Hashem could make the poor wealthy. That's within his power.
Right.
Somehow it said there will always be poor. I'm not really sure why, but one thing I've heard said is this situation, not want to say forces us, but leads us to interact with each other, to rely on each other, to talk to each other, to think about each other. So it enhances togetherness and it enhances mutual responsibility. So it builds the kind of society, apparently, that Hashem, wants us to have. And so it's a healthy society where all the poor serve a function that's needed, as well as the people who are able to produce wealth, have a mission, that they can fulfill, and all of it builds connection.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
You have to wonder, the Amish have been around a long time, right? Their system has been around a long time. Uh, how many
Not
problems?
comparatively to us.
Well, but I mean, if you compare it to, the US, right,
Yes.
or modern systems, and you have to wonder, right, how much problems do they have with the poor people becoming violent, right? And the thing is, it puts a completely different face on life when you do things like this because money is no longer a zero-sum game of life and death.
Hmm.
It takes the edge off of it and it says, you know what, we all have to do this, so we do it to survive and whatever. But look, here it is. If you're down on your luck, if you don't have anything, well, here's something. You can have this, and it creates also gratitude in the poor because the poor realize he doesn't have to give this, right? It
Hmm.
wasn't legislated. He's not being forced. They're doing it because they believe
Well,
it's the
is
right
he
thing.
not? He's still legislated for the 10% tithe.
He is, but he can refuse, right? I mean, nobody, is anybody putting a gun to his head? What happens if he doesn't do it, right? Or if he gives more than he should, right? It creates
If he
a
doesn't do it, then we lead to Aliyah 6.
right.
Oh no.
So, right. So, but the whole idea is that when you create a welfare state, you might think that, oh, this is like a welfare state. It's not a welfare state because a welfare state creates an attitude of entitlement where poor people say, I deserve this. And they just sit back and they say, I deserve this. And you need to give me my check. And that completely
Well, that's why.
destroys the whole environment. What they're trying to do here, they're trying to foster an environment of gratitude and positivity between people,
Right.
not negativity. And that's the main thing. That's why God doesn't just give the poor money.
But it's also equality, Sam, because you're rich, I'm not. You give 10%, I give 10%. We both gave 10%,
Right.
right, of our
Right.
tithe. It
Yeah.
hurt me as much as it hurts you.
More than equality, I would say that money is not such a differentiator. We're all still humans.
I agree.
Okay, so I got more money than you. Okay, fine. Whatever. It's not such a
You're going to
big
be
deal.
able to help even more people than I
Right.
can.
Yeah, it's not such a big deal. If you go to the third world and you see some of these class societies, it is brutal and it's cruel. The minute you have money, you turn around,
Yep.
you start like, sniffing down at everybody else just because you have money. And
There's
it's
no
like,
more giving country in the world than the
yeah,
US.
no,
And it's
absolutely.
by far. Rafael, you had something? You wanted to
Yeah,
say something?
yeah, yo estuve escuchando un shiur hace un tiempo atrás que decía el rabino Giver, argentino, que el pobre no va a cesar en la tierra, dice el Eterno, el pobre siempre va a estar en la tierra.
Hmm.
Y cuando una persona le da a un pobre, nosotros no estamos bendiciendo al pobre por darle, sino que el pobre, nosotros al darle al pobre, nosotros somos bendecidos. Porque a Hashem lo que le gusta es el Rahim, la misericordia.
Hmm.
Y de eso se rige el mundo, gracias a su gran e infinita misericordia, nosotros estamos vivos. Pues cuando usted compadece por los demás, pero el Eterno se compadece de ti.
Right. What he's saying in a nutshell is that compassion is what enables life to happen. Right. And so God's compassion for us, the compassion of us for the poor, this is a chain that has to be continued. If we break that chain, then we know what happens, right? Then there's all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
problems. And the
Yeah.
poor, what he mentioned also is the poor will not, there's a quote somewhere in the Torah which says the poor will never cease from your land. There will always be poor people, which you have to wonder why, but I think the reason is some people cannot handle money. For some people, you give them money and it's a curse. They actually don't know how to handle it. It makes their life worse. And so those people need to be poor because they need to learn the lesson of what to do with money when they come upon money.
Mm-hmm.
We've all heard stories of those who win the lottery And some of them come back and say it was the worst thing that ever happened to them because they just went crazy. And so, money's not for everyone. And if somebody's poor, then maybe that's why. So,
Well, look at this whole discussion we've had over the last 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes right now. And that's the first 5 aliyot. Now we get to the 6th aliyah, which is about the curses. And it's 2 to 3 times as long as what we've just discussed. So let's move into it because it's one of the most intense sections of Torah.
Yep.
With extraordinary blessings if Israel follows God's ways,
Right.
but equally severe curses if we don't.
Right. And the curses are much longer than the blessings.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's like 2/3 of the aliyah.
98
curses.
curses versus 49 blessings.
Right.
Oh, so double.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really, and as I said before, it's people tend to not listen. And so he's emphasizing, the good stuff. Hey, that's easy, right? Hey, look, I'm going to bless you. Okay, great. Everything's wonderful. But when he says, don't do this, nobody wants to not do something, right? You don't want to have limits. And so so Hashem emphasizes over and over and over again, and people still don't listen. This is the amazing part. There was a movie actually that made fun of this. Anyway, we won't get into that. But how many times Hashem says, "Don't do it, don't do it," and the first thing people do is they do it. And so this is, you might say, "Oh, it's excessive, it's repetitive, and this and that." But look at Jewish history; it has actually happened over and over and over again in almost every place on earth. The Inquisition, the Holocaust, the pogroms, just everywhere, and we're still in the same mode.
We don't learn our lesson.
No, not at all.
And that's the lesson of this. The Torah makes it clear that choices have consequences, both individually and nationally.
Right. So even though Hashem, as I mentioned before, does 99% of everything, we still have that 1% of a choice.
He lets us control it, right?
Right. And that's like, okay, that's your choice, and that's going to determine what happens to you. Right. So you're not going to alter God's master plan, but you can alter where you stand on that master plan. Are you for it or are you against it? So that's what happens here. So if you're against it, it's like, walking out in the middle of a hurricane. You're going to get hit.
Yeah.
And so, and the chilling part for me of all this, there's a part where this translation is a little bit different than the one I'm used to. There's one part that says that he will bring a nation from afar, and he says it will be a fierce nation that has no respect for the young or the old. And this was exactly the Holocaust.
And this is
the children and the old people who were killed.
And this is Hamas. Hamas is the same.
Hamas is the same.
Man has not changed.
Right. And so you see, and why is that? Why the young and the old? Because again, if you go back to nature, if you go back to the wild, who gets killed, right? Predators are not interested in a fight. Predators are interested in lunch.
Always the vulnerable element.
Right. So the vulnerable are an easy kill. Children and old people, they're an easy kill. And so the Nazis and Hamas, what they're doing is they're sinking back into the animal. And they're saying, yeah, I killed them. You know why? Because I can. And that's where they're sinking into. And this is the antithesis of the Torah, which brings in laws and everything and is intended to elevate us to another level. And then these other people sink back down into the animal.
Very good. I'd like to throw something out there. I think it's my feeling that this will continue happening to us, unfortunately, until we take care of our own business internally and start coming together as Jews, start not discriminating. And one of those things that really pops up is the news this past week in Israel that broke out about a Haredi school in Israel refusing admission to Sephardic girls. It's painful to hear about such discrimination from our own, especially when the Torah calls us to unity and justice. And this parasha reminds us that our covenantal blessings depend on how we treat one another. And here you are, Haredim that put themselves at such a high level, they're committing a sin, in my opinion. They're including the vulnerable and marginalized in our own people. And just as Moses spoke to the Israelites about collective responsibility, we too have to ask, what kind of community do we want to build? And what are the consequences when we fail to live up to our values?
Yeah.
Well, the destruction of the first temple was consequent to idolatry, and we were without a temple for 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
The second temple was destroyed because of causeless hatred. It was worse than idolatry, and we have been punished for 2,000 years for it.
Mm.
And they were very learned people at the time. The second temple, this is when we have all those geniuses of Torah. Yet,
Maimonides, etc.
because there was no compassion and there was causeless hatred, we were scattered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Because
we see it today.
Yes, causeless hatred is worse than idolatry in the eyes of God.
Yeah, how many times do you go to a Jewish community, anyone, and you see this game of one-upmanship going on, or I'm better than you, or this and that, and you see people try to prove that they're more observant or whatever. This is still going on. That's one observation. And the second one is, if we think we're so good today, look at what's happening. Anti-Semitism is back in full force.
Yeah.
So here's a question for the audience. What do you all think is the problem here? What can we do to make this go away? What is our great sin?
I
Not to
think
make it go away, to fix it.
How do we fix it? That's the big question. So
we have
Nathaniel,
forgotten.
sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me.
No, go ahead, please.
We have forgotten to be a light unto the nations. We have darkened our light, and therefore we have fallen into obscurity.
Yes, I believe that is, I agree 100%. That to me is the number one, followed very closely, or maybe even tied with number one, with what Nathaniel mentioned, which is our own self-causeless hatred and discrimination. And again, if we don't do our mission, think about a school and a classroom. The world is a classroom. The Goyim are the students. The Jews are the teachers. And this is not arrogance. This is just the way it is. If the teacher steps down and tries to sit with the students and pretend like he's just one more student and I just want a place among the students, what happens? The whole thing collapses, right? If the whole thing collapses into chaos, this is what's happening in the world. So it's just, we need to step up and say, you know what? We are the teachers, which means we need to learn first. We all need to learn. But even without learning, we know how to think. There are things we know that the Goyim don't. So just by interacting and trying to help them, we will see the fruits of this. This will create appreciation on the parts of the Goyim. And then this breaks the cycle, I believe, of anti-Semitism. However, once we are in a cycle of war with the Goyim, like we have been for the last 2,000 years, it becomes extremely difficult, right? When our people have been murdered and there's this constant back and forth, they kill us, we strike back with the weapons that we have, which, whatever they might be, financial, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter.
Right.
We're in a state of war. And so to me, it's not a small thing that we're doing wrong. It's not that, we didn't put on to fill in exactly the right way with the proper measurements or all this stuff that people think. It's huge. Our core mission is not being fulfilled. So I just wanted to open it up to others as well.
We're our own worst enemy. And that's what I said at the beginning of this, is we don't take care of our own and show humility and stop the arrogance and come back to God, and it won't change. That's the only way to change it. We can control it. We do so well at everything else, in medicine, in business, and finance, and everything, but we have to get back to the basics. Amichai posted something just now, which is beautiful. And he said, when we forget we are one family, our enemies remind us.
Yeah.
So true.
And with that, guess what, Sam? Guess what time it is? It's time.
Okay.
So, but I appreciate you, Sam. I appreciate all our audience here with us today and every day. And please feel free to comment once we post this. And remember that Parashat Ki Tavo reminds us of the power and gratitude, the necessity of justice, and the weight of accountability. And the blessings and curses aren't just ancient words. They challenge us to look at choices we make as individuals and as a community. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you next week for Parashat Nitzavim, just in time for the high holidays. Shavua Tov, everyone.
What of?
About,
So,